Welcome to World Dog Expo. My name is Drayton Michaels. I'm a certified dog trainer. And real quick bullet points on what I'm doing. Hey man, what's up? Thanks for being here. I was certified by the Academy for Dog Trainers. At the time, it was a 6-week course in San Francisco out of their SPCA. For the last 17 years, I have been working with dogs, and over that 17 years, it's been a very rare day that I haven't had a dog in my hands or in my house or a client, etc. I have 2 businesses, Urban Dogs and Pitbull Guru, both .coms. You can check them out. And I'm a force-free positive trainer. That means I do not cause dogs fear, pain, or startle. And today's topic is about counter-conditioning leash reactive dogs, okay? So real quick, little house cleaning on behavior and training so that we can all, look at this legitimately, because the biggest problem is people don't really understand how behavior works, and there's a lot of misinformation. So dogs learn through association and consequence. Those are the 2 ways they learn. Associative learning works like this: safe, unsafe, neutral, period. It's really good to know this. Dogs do not have a moral imperative, okay? When they are socially mature around 2 or 3, okay, the larger breeds mature a little slower, they have the cognition of 3-year-old kids for life. They're not stubborn, jealous, spiteful. None of that is not possible, okay? A dog can land 25 bites in 4 seconds. A 35-pound dog could take off a human thumb like that. So if they really had an agenda like, hey, I don't want to do this, trust me, there would be a lot more people being killed by dogs every year. So there's no moral imperative. When your dog is doing something or not doing something, it's based on environment. That's the #1 influence on behavior. Behavior's in the environment, not in the dog. And I'll drill that down a little bit in a sec. Biology, obviously, brain chemistry, right? Stress hormones, etc. And history. And that history is related to reinforcement, okay, or lack thereof. So there's always a reason why dogs are doing something, and it's usually and most probably environmental, history, and then, of course, biology. So the environment is the #1 thing that influences behavior, and dogs that are in shelters obviously have a very specific environment. If they're lucky, they get out of their enclosure or their cage for 2 or 3 times to go for a walk. Maybe if it's an advanced shelter, they can get into a play group, etc. So what's really crucial about dogs in shelters going into homes is that they need to have preparation. So why it's really crucial to counter-condition leash reactive dogs is because they are going to go out in society and they can't be reacting on leash, because they're probably going to get euthanized in a shelter if they're barking and lunging. Now, leash reactivity is often thought of as aggression. Aggression is rooted in fear, okay? So if the dog has a bona fide fear of people or other dogs, then okay, we can say there's some fear going on there. But with associative learning, it's not always a clear shot. So you're walking your dog, you're hanging out, and all of a sudden they go, huh? Now in that moment, they're trying to decide safe, unsafe, neutral, okay? And we need to help them by counter-conditioning. That's what I was doing with that dog back there, okay? So every time you go, hey, and you jerk the dog's neck, sure, they might stop, but they don't like that stimulus any more than they did a second ago. As a matter of fact, they like it less. Okay, so, and people who use choke chains and prong collars and hey, ach, and all that stuff, what happens is they're hoping the dog shuts down, right? They really hope the dog goes, okay, all right? So it's kind of like this. One time I hit you and then I just lean in, okay. That's exactly what that is. It's based in negative reinforcement. I'm going to give you a pop or whatever, and then I'm going to just, and then hopefully you figure it out. The problem is that a lot of dogs don't figure it out, and there's punishment calluses. So where do you go, right? Where do you go if it doesn't work if you do it once? Do you do more? So we won't even talk about the trachea, the occipedial nerves that go down the side of the neck, that you can damage a dog's eyesight by choking them on a collar. The main thing is you want to create the most positive association for the dog possible to everything, because dogs can land 25 bites in 4 seconds. And a dog that bites someone in a shelter is definitely going to get euthanized. A dog that lunges and barks because they're frustrated, not fearful, but frustrated, may get put down that day. Right? Because who's interpreting that behavior? So when I get an email or a phone call and they want me to come evaluate a dog at a shelter, I say, sorry, can't do it. And they say, why? I said, because you have how many people handling these dogs? 12, 15? Okay. It'd be better if I came and talked to your whole staff, because if we've got 3 people who understand counter conditioning and 5 who don't, and the 5 people are going, hey, I get it, right? And they're manhandling dogs, then it's not worth it if I evaluate the dog. Here's the dirty little secret. It's all about human behavior. It has very little to do with dog behavior. It really does, okay? And I don't want to hear about, well, this is the breed, and no. human behavior. I need to know human behavior. What's their handling skills, right? How deft are they? Do they have any kind of skills, or are they just grabbing dogs and moving them around and saying, hey, cut it out? So consequences, that's the other way dogs learn. And those consequences should be kind and consistent, okay? So I don't cause dogs fear or pain, but I'll disappoint them. So the dog's paws go up on the counter, too bad, I time you out, right? Dog jumps for a treat in my hand, I remove the treat, right? I would say, wait, crack the door an inch, dog moves, I shut the door. So I'll bum a dog out. I will disappoint them, but I will never cause a dog fear or pain, because fear generalizes very easy. So if they're afraid of your hands, the next pair of hands all come with warnings, right? So it's really crucial that when your dog or a dog you're working with has a moment, no matter what the moment is that you get distance and jolly talk and treats. And I'm going to show you how in a sec, or at least explain how you can do counter conditioning for dogs that are reactive on leash. So associative learning, safe, unsafe, neutral, okay? Consequence learning, that is the sequences or flow charts that dogs figure out, and hopefully we teach them. Everybody pretty much knows Pavlov, you know, he rang the bell and then gave the dog food, and what he realized is they started drooling when he rang the bell. But what they don't tell you is that those dogs started to drool when they came in to work in the morning. That's called back chaining. You ever grab a leash when you're cleaning your house and your dog's like, oh my God, it's a walk. You're like, no, sorry, buddy, I'm just cleaning, right? Or you always wear a pair of shoes to walk your dog and they're like, oh my God, those are the shoes. You're like, no, I'm just taking out the trash. So predictive value. What is the predictive value of people? Traffic, other dogs, weird lawn ornaments. If that predictive value to the dog is kind of like, oh, I don't know, then we need to counter condition. We need to convince the dog you're okay. 99.9999999% of the things in life that your dog is afraid of, never going to hurt him. But when dogs are afraid, they think, uh-oh, is the graveyard next? Just like every meal, is this the last meal? So dogs are programmed by nature to be ultimate survivalists. My joke is they don't bungee jump, right? So we could all go bungee jumping and go, oh, I don't know. Well, he was bigger than I was. A little kid did it. Bang a shot of Jaeger, high five our friend, and jump off the bridge, right? But dogs don't work that way. When they become afraid, they shut down, okay? The thing about being on leash for dogs is they don't have their flight response. So fight, flight, freeze. We all know those three classic responses. Well, they can freeze on leash. They can fight, bark, 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 or they can react, but they can't flee. And that's huge. So there's already a little bit of stress associated with being on leash. Now, let me backtrack a little and say, when I say dogs on leash, I mean they're on a harness, okay? So I don't recommend people walk dogs on any kind of collar, because your trachea, your neck and back muscles, the occipedial nerves for their eyes, that's all here, right? And if you think about the physics, would you rather walk a dog by their body or by the neck, right? There's more control. So I don't walk dogs by collars, any collar. I use a collar for a little handle and some ID. I walk all dogs. My clients are all required to have their dogs on a harness because I don't want the dog choking itself. Even a dog who's super happy is like, oh my God, the fire hydrant, right? Oh, right? It tweaks me out when dogs get choked. I don't want to deal with it, and I know the physical and behavioral fallouts from it. So counter conditioning is the proactive process of creating a better association for the dog. Now, we're going to talk about leash reactivity, but you can counter condition dogs to muzzles, harnesses, their enclosure, reaches. Counter conditioning is something that can be done for tactile stuff, but in this case, we're going to talk about leash reactivity. So you have a dog, and whether they're reactive or not, when they go, huh? Yes, and treat. All right, everybody aware of what a marker is? You guys know what a marker is? Like a clicker? Okay, so markers, like a clicker, or I use the word yes because I'm a great thumb expert. Like, I play a lot of video games, and I program lots of drum machines, and I play guitar, so my thumbs are killer. But I don't want to put anything in my hand, and I can always say yes, right? And the thing about a marker is it needs to be protected. In other words, you don't want to just use it to get the dog's attention. That's why clickers in the home with kids, right? Like a 6-year-old kid, right? And the dog comes running, but there's no food. So when you pair your marker with food, and I'm a traditionalist, some positive trainers will use a marker for anything. I always pair my marker with food, okay? So if you mark behavior, dog sits, yes, here comes a treat, right? Recall, dog come, whoop, 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 grab, yes, pay him off, right? Let him go. So when you pair your marker with food, you end up with a good predictive value to that word, but also to the jogger, the other dog, the bike, whatever it is that the dog goes, huh? Yes, and treat. Now, when you mark and pay your dog for noticing something in the environment changing suddenly, over time, that has a good predictive value. Remember Pavlov and his buddies when they came to work, right? They were like, hey, these dogs are drooling. We haven't even started yet. Yeah, because they figured it out. Because scientists are, if nothing, they're consistent. We show up at 8, we do this at 8:05, right? So again, I'll go back to it. The dirty little secret is human behavior. That's what gets dogs trained. That's the variable. Had the fortunate pleasure of studying with Dr. Susan Friedman a few years ago, and she says, and again, Dr. Robert Sapolsky, who's a fantastic I think behavioral biologist or something like that, he says the same thing. Behavior's in the environment, not in the dog. Okay? There's behaviors in the environment, more specifically the context. Here's an example, the living room. You're in the living room, 8 o'clock in the morning, you're training your dog, everything's going great. They're totally focused. 8 o'clock at night, doorbell rings, your friends show up with pizza and beer, dog's tuned out. The only thing that changed was the context. Same dog, you're the same person, you're in the same environment, but the context changed, and it changed suddenly, right? So when you're outside with a dog on leash and something happens, now, I'm a counter conditioning fanatic, meaning even if the dog doesn't have a pathology of barking and lunging, I mark and pay anyway for anything they go, huh? Especially kids, because kids go from calm to chaotic in the blink of an eye. My last dog, Silas, I was walking him in my neighborhood, and I would always mark and pay him for these little kids. And they were always pretty mellow, but on this one day, as we got about 4 feet past, the kid starts smashing his toys like little kids do, and my dog was like, whoa. And I'm glad I had been marking and paying my dog for kids, right? Because that sudden environmental contrast, being on leash, no flight response. Now add in, you're sitting in an enclosure all day, and you don't know who's gonna come grab you and walk you, right? And you would hope it's somebody who's got a pouch full of treats, super handling skills, and when you go, shit, yes, treat, good boy, yes, right? Now, here's the caveat with leash reactivity. You need the right distance, okay? So, give up the idea of perfection. I train 400 dogs a year, and I've been working with dogs for 17 years, and there hasn't been a day that's gone by that I haven't had a dog where I've had to do some work, whether they're my dogs, clients' dogs, etc. And I can tell you right now, if you think you're perfect, quit it. Stop it. It's about better percentages, okay? Right? I'm LeBron out here, for real. I worked with 7 dogs today before I got here. It's not about perfection. It's about stress reduction and better percentages. And if you use that model, you'll have more success, right? If you reduce your dog's stress first, they're going to learn better. And I won't get into the weeds about brain chemistry, but trust me, when dogs are stressed, you have to work a lot harder. So if you work at reducing stress with distance, right, padding, that's what I was doing with that little dog back there. It's okay, good boy, I'm padding that event. Dog's already stressed. I don't need to go cut it out because now, right? So if you're stressed and you show up at my house, sit down. Stop. Or, hey, gee, are you okay? Oh, yeah, I'm here, have a beer, right? You're going to feel much better if I help you feel better about that stressful event, okay? So, distance is crucial. That means human awareness, all right? So when you're walking dogs who are in a shelter, those dogs' futures every single day are on the line. Unless it's just like, I'm this dog, oh my God, I love everyone. That dog's not getting euthanized. But if the dog's a little stiff, the dog's a little shy, maybe he snapped once or twice, maybe he barked at a skateboard, right? Now, I don't work at shelters anymore because I don't train dogs by committee. I'll be really honest, unless the committee is like overall Dodman, Dunbar, you know, right. But so I know the environment because I've done a lot of work with shelters and volunteered. When you have that dog out for 10 minutes or 15, that's huge, okay? That's massive. So that dog who might be a little reactive or a little shut down, every time they go, huh? No matter what it is, a human, a dog, a skateboard, anything, even the wind, yes, and treat them. Now, if it's a sustained event, it's a jogger, right? It's another dog. Every couple seconds, yes, 1001, 1002, yes, 1001. You pay every couple of seconds. So if that bike's going by for 15 seconds, every couple seconds, you need to pay. Now, if you don't think you have the distance, create it. So super awareness, right? So if you have a dog who's pretty much gathering scent, they're not playing the environment, we'll talk about that in a sec, but you got a dog who's focused on gathering scent, you can use that to keep your 360. And you're like, here comes a jogger. Shit, I need 10 feet. Come on, buddy, let's go. Pay him for that. Get your distance and just wait till he goes, Jogger, yes, treat. Every 2 seconds while that jogger's going by. If you do this, even if you're okay at it, what happens is pretty soon the dog goes, jogger, pay me. Yeah, right? They disengage from now the stimulus is the cue. The person, the dog, the traffic, whatever it is. Now that signals, pay me, right? Time and time again, I get an email or a phone call, and this is the scenario. I hired a trainer. They came over with their dog or whatever they did, and they told me to tell the dog to look at me and sit, and it fell apart. I bet it did, because you didn't have enough distance, and you required too much work for the dog. Right? So if you're stressed or you're not sure, you're trying to figure out where you're going, and I'm in the car and I'm like, come on, turn, turn. You're like, dude, just let me figure out where the fuck I'm going. But a lot of people treat dogs that way. Come on, turn, let's go, move, come on. When the dog's happy and they're thrilled, great, come on, let's go, leave it all the way. Right? I could be a soccer coach, but when the dog's like, shit, I don't know what's going on. Yes, you know what's going on, pal? I'm paying you for this weird thing. I'm paying you for this thing that you don't know what's going on with it. So now you're going to know, because the next jogger, the next trap, whatever the next stimulus is going to have a better association than the last one. And if every single person who walks that dog in the shelter does this, guess what you get? You get a dog who's super happy about being on leash. When they do have a moment, they're checking in. They're like, shit, you pay me for that. Why are you slow today? Right? So your mechanics and timing, that's the dirty little secret. Right? It's the human mechanics and timing of reinforcement and kind consequences. And if you go out and you train dogs with that, and you say, I'm not going to cause them fear or pain, number one, you're legit. Animal trainers who train lions, right, stuff like that, they don't dominate them. Huh? You know why? They'll get fucking killed. Yeah. You know why people hurt dogs and call it training? They can get away with it. It's that simple. So again, I don't know about shelter politics, if you can take dogs off the property and blah, blah, blah. Do they need to be on a prong collar? All that kind of stuff. But I can tell you that the real deal animal trainers, the bad motherfuckers who really know their shit, no fear, no force, and they know their science. But all you guys need to know is this. Fear generalizes really easy for dogs. So if they're afraid of this jogger today, the next one, right, is going to be viewed as uh-oh. And if it's too close too soon, they might react, okay? So know that when you go back and you talk to the kennel manager or whoever you need to report to, or if you guys hear anybody here is that person, you need to make sure that your staff isn't going, oh my God, this dog tried to kill him. No, he didn't. You didn't have enough distance. Your mechanics and timing sucked. Learn how to train a fucking dog. Get some skill sets, and if the dog has a moment, know that it was stress, right? Because dogs can land 25 bites in 4 seconds, so if the dog was going to really do damage, how many people touched the dog today? 10? Everybody got their hands? Dog's not that bad. Dogs don't pull punches. When they want to bite you, they bite you. I've been attacked by 2 dogs as a professional trainer, and in both cases, I missed the first 2, but then he got me. No one's faster than a dog. They're 7 to 10 times faster than any human. Okay? So again, there's no moral imperative. There's no bad dogs. There's just bad environments. There's just humans who don't have enough skill sets to deal with whatever the issue is. So by counter-conditioning dogs who are in a shelter to sudden environmental contrast and making good predictive value for them, you're giving them a new lease on life. Because let's say you do this and you come back and you're like, oh my God, you remember Benji? Yeah, he doesn't bark and lunge at cars anymore. Because now I've been going, yes, and treating him because this dude at the seminar told me to do that. And the dog's looking at cars and he's paying attention to me. It happens time and time again. When I get a leash reactive dog for a client, I get the email a week later. If they do the work, oh my God, my life is totally different now. I can walk my dog. Is it going to happen if you have a really leash reactive dog? Sure, right? Even Steph Curry misses now and then, but not a lot. Not a lot, right? So if you're paying attention, you got high value food, okay? Let's talk about food for a minute. Food is money. So you can't use crappy stuff, right? And when dogs don't take food, fear trumps food, stress trumps food, super excitement trumps food. A lot of times in puppy classes, dogs won't want food, not because they're picky, because they want to play with little puppies, right? So dog play takes the gold, food takes the silver. They get leashed up, we go back to the seat to train, guess what? Food goes back to gold. So you need good stuff. You need super high value chicken, steak, roast beef, hot dogs, just fabulous treats, because you're counter conditioning a dog to not have as much or no stress, right? Because you can I mean, I conditioned my first dog, counter-conditioned my first dog, Mojo, to not react at motorcycles. I have the video. When I first moved to Red Bank, New Jersey, and he heard a motorcycle, wah, 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 big 80-pound am staff, I was like, I better get to work. Marked and paid, marked and paid, marked and paid. It took about 2.5 months, and he was like, motorcycle, pay me. But he was in like Overeaters Anonymous, that dog. Like he could eat anything. I could have given him Cheerios, and he would. So, but still, the point is that know your dogs, right? Like know these dogs, right? The dogs you work with, audition different food. You might be able to get away with using really basic stuff if you got a super foodie dog. But the reason why I suggest high value food is because, and you can do it right. I do it with dogs all the time. Right before I leave my facility or the person's house, I give the dog the food. They eat it. We step outside, and the dog stops taking food because they're stressed. We go back inside, then the dog takes it. So before you leave your shelter property or the shelter itself, audition it. Dog's taking it. Okay, great. And if you go outside and the dog stops taking food, it could be stress, could be fear, could be I just really want to smell. Let dogs smell. I got to tell you right now, if you want to do your dogs a big favor, let them gather scent. It's just like you going on the gram. Oh, wow, that dude, I hate him. Anyway, so yeah, it's really important that you have your dogs gather scent. Counter conditioning works, okay? It absolutely works. I've counter conditioned dogs to like other dogs, to not freak out at joggers, bikes, skateboards, other dogs. But if you don't do it, and that dog's reacting and lunging, right? What happens to that dog in shelter? They get a bad rep, and they probably get euthanized, or they languish. My second dog, Keisha, a little 50-pound pit, she was at the Monmouth County SPCA for 2 years. And she was really leash reactive, like but it was with dogs. And she didn't want people leaning in her face like that because she had too much of it. She had too much of that. So she would just, but she made it. They kept giving her a reprieve. And when I adopted her, it took me about 2 years to get her to not react at other dogs. I became a master at wind sprints, okay? Became a master at observational skills. I paid her for the dog that barked across the street for 2 months before she ever saw the dog. I would just pay for the bark. This little dog, Miles. And when she finally saw him, she was like, oh yeah, but whatever. I've been hearing you bark for 2 months and I've been getting paid, right? So just the bark of the dog, I counter conditioned. And then by the time I got the visual stimulus, she was like, yeah, but I'd rather go walk. So, and we had done a lot of work. It was like almost 1.5 years, 2 years in at that point. Don't be afraid to manage out of situations. If you think that the dog's going to go over threshold, but sometimes you have to decide, like right now, it's fourth quarter, 5 seconds, what are we doing? You shooting, you blocking, what are you doing? Right? Because if you're walking dog, you're like, oh, here comes the skateboard. I need 20 feet. Let's go. Right? You get your dog 20 feet, you wait for them to look at the skateboard. Yes, pay. Yes, pay. Okay? If you have to do a food spill, break that duration, break that gaze. Eat, 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 eat. Oh, the skateboard's gone. Okay. Right? So I have a lot of videos on the Urban Dogs YouTube channel. A lot of videos on counter conditioning leash reactive dogs, and any behavior in dogs who are in shelters that's not benign is looked at as a problem, right? So if you do this and that person adopts the dog and you say, hey, I want to show you something, right? This is how you counter condition. Go watch this guy's videos. Guess what they get? They get skills and they get a way to manage that dog who might. Right? Because a lot of times it just starts with, oh, it's okay, he's not doing anything. I get a lot of emails with the topic kind of like, my dog was great for 4 months or 5 months or 6 months, right? And I always say that usually there's about a 90-day transition when dogs leave a shelter, go to a home, right? So if they're really mellow in the shelter, maybe after 60 days they become a little bit more alive. Or if they're really kooky in the shelter, maybe they need 60 to 90 days to sort of acclimate to that new environment. And then every now and then there's just a dog who's awesome and they get adopted and they're like, oh, okay, now I live here, right? And we love that. But in regards to dogs who react on leash, whether it's at humans, dogs, traffic, sounds, mark and pay. And if you can't get the food out soon enough, pad that with happy talk, okay? Good boy, it's okay, you're okay, right? Pad that event. Look into stress hormones, glucocorticoids. See what stress does to the immune system. Right? You think it kills people quick? Dogs in shelters have a lot of stress, and they get outside. They get their 1 or 2 walks, and then that association they have to the outside world is going to be carried with them. So it's really crucial to do it. Not enough people do this, And again, I don't know what everybody's shelter politics are about, what you can do and what you can't do, but definitely sell whoever you have to sell on the idea that dogs should be on harnesses, people should be carrying food, and we need to counter condition these dogs, because if they're not reactive, they're going to have a better life here, and they're going to have a better life when they get out of here. Okay? Any questions? Yes?
Do you have any particular comments on seniors in kennels?
Senior dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah, reduce their stress, get them out as much as possible. Kind of like with every dog, but especially for, the older dogs. Just really, I'd be really careful about having them in play groups with young adolescent dogs who are a little bit more gregarious, because a lot of times they can't handle that. But, and put them at the top of we need vet care for the older dogs first. Like, this dog's 10, let's get, I'm super thorough. Like, I require, or at least seriously suggest, blood tests for dogs, food allergy tests. I realize, finances and shelters aren't always able to do that, but if there was any money allocated for vet care, I would bring it to the senior dogs first. You got a question? You had a question? Yeah.
What do you do for the leash reactive dog that's reactive to the leash? And maybe it's a 1-year-old large breed dog that has never been trained to walk on a leash.
Right.
So as soon as you get them out,
biting the leash.
they're biting on the leash, biting on your
Right.
elbows, trying to knock you over.
Two things. Three things. One, you got to become really good at handling. Number two, get something in the dog's mouth right away. Right. So I talked to you about my second dog, Keisha. I found a stick. It was about this long, and when I got to her crate or cage or whatever, and I leashed her up, she was in a top one. As soon as I pulled her down, I put the stick right in her mouth, and I walked her right through the shelter with the stick in her mouth. And then when we got outside, I put the stick in my back pocket, and she went to smell. When I went back in to put her in, I put the stick in her mouth. I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks of that, and then she was like, all right, whatever, let's just get outside, right? Now, dogs who bite the leash, for me, what I do is I get it out of their mouth, and I call it wrist to clip. So there's nothing there but my wrist and the clip, right? And I say, it's okay, pop, get your smells. And I get that dog smelling. I'll take their nose, and lure them right to the ground. Get your smells. I could show you a video of a bulldog I worked with recently who was like nuts about, I was on my knees. I was like, this fucking dog's nuts. He was crazy. That's just, a lot of that's human finesse, and if you can get that dog playing tug, right? So they get that behavior. Remember, behavior that's rehearsed becomes stronger. So if the dog's rehearsing it, it becomes stronger. We're the variable. So a lot of times it's just about a creative solution, You got a question?
What about if you are having trouble getting the dog out of the kennel? Let's say the dog doesn't like men.
Right.
What would you suggest? Would you suggest having a man go to the kennel?
No.
Be like, yes,
No. And you know what? Most of the time when someone says this dog doesn't like men, I find out that if this dog is afraid of people, but the difference is that most men don't go, oh, who's a good boy? Hi, good boy. See, I have no problem with doing that. I'm a trained vocalist, so I can go from, who's a good boy, to stay real quick, right? So, I would get all the women in the shelter to deal with the dog first, and I would have men be introduced at an appropriate distance. But see, this is where the math and science comes in, and everybody just wants to either go, fuck, I hope it works, or put a choke chain on him, teach him who's boss, which both ways is not good. So you have a dog, we'll just say, okay, for the sake of argument, afraid of men, what I would do is I would get the dog on leash in a wide open area, right? So their peripherals aren't jammed by walls and everything. And I'd figure out what's the distance that this dog can deal with this person. Is it 10 feet? Okay, 10 feet, the dog's cool. Let's make it 12 to take a couple extra feet. And then I would just hang out. And every time the dog went, dude, yes, straight. I wouldn't have the guy approach. I wouldn't have him kneel down. That's how you get bit in the face. Distance. When dogs are fearful, they want distance. And the reason why they create a fuss is because they're saying, get away. I don't feel good, right? Or when they go, shit, don't touch me. Oh my God, right? They're saying, okay, I can't handle it. So then I would find the most savvy, dedicated man in the shelter, and I would find somebody who really understood counter conditioning, and I would start to counter condition that one person to go to the crate, treat, and leave, right? Because the thing about it is you can't get long-term behavior with short-term approaches. And a lot of times with fear and stress-related behaviors, what you need is a lot of patience. Go slow. Because if you rush it and you sensitize the dog, now they have a real big problem. So you want to desensitize, right? Does everybody know what that means? Right? So if I have spiders in a jar, you're like, that's kind of weird, but they're in a jar. And if I pour them out, right, I sensitize you, right? Okay, so desensitization means make the thing smaller, less intense, less scary. So that's real easy when you have people who are willing to help you. It's a lot harder because that skateboard comes out of nowhere, right? That Big Mac truck makes the dog, like, so these things, the reason why leash reactivity is really challenging is because stuff happens quick, right? I would much rather have to counter condition the reach of a human than skateboards. It's much easier because you can control the variables, you know? But that's how I would do it. I would just break it down, you know? And again, whether it's 5 people in a home or 25 people in a shelter, the reason why dogs do well is because everybody's on the same team, right? Everybody's working from the same plan. If I was a shelter director, every single dog would be on film every day, even if it was 2 minutes. And I would have one person dedicated to just putting it in the computer and logging it. Because the only way you really know about behavior is if you have it on film. Nobody's memory is great. Let's see, for the last, I've been filming pretty much everything I do for like the last 10 years, but hardcore since like 2010. Every puppy class, every dog training session is on film. I wear a GoPro on my chest. I have my clients just hold a GoPro when I'm training, have GoPros on mounts in my facility, and I have like 35 hard drives, all just every session. You could say, hey, what did you do on September 25th, 2013? Boom, right here. Right? And why it's crucial for dogs to do that in shelters is because now you know, right? So I realize that's like a fantasy. You don't need resources and time, but how many times have people stood around bullshitting with their phone when they could have been actually filming the assessment at the food bowl that took a minute, and now you know, oh, he growled at 3 feet. So when we do it tomorrow, let's do it at 5, right? But, you know, that's, to get people to understand behavior legitimately and do it the right way isn't always that easy when it's in a shelter environment, you know, because you have different opinions. See, I'm only loyal to dogs, and when I got into dogs, I didn't know anything. I had no baggage. I had no baggage when I got into dogs, none. So everything that I learned was like, oh, okay. And then once I found out, oh, there's a way to do this where you don't have to yell and cause the dog fear and pain, I was like, I'm taking that route, you know. So, any other questions? Yeah.
What about a dog that catches a scent and then takes off and does not come back?
Are they on leash?
Yes, but my dog got out of her harness.
Get a freedom harness.
Well,
Serious.
we went and got a different harness
Yeah.
on the way home. But
Well, in that case, you want to have a super recall, right? So was this a shelter dog?
yeah.
Okay. So you want to have a super recall. So that's where, you know, again, if I had my druthers and you said, all right, well, what are we going to do? All right, well, let's take this dog, go to the enclosure and work on recall, work on touch, right? Even if it's for 3 minutes. You know, I taught music for years, and, you know, I'd always tell my students, you know, let's just learn a couple bars instead of the whole song, right? Right? So a lot of times that's what you need. Just work on recall, work on touch, get some disengagement where the dog's coming back, you know? And with emergency recall, you don't use it casually, right? So you don't go, dog, come, dog, come. You don't do that. You just go, what's up, buddy? Oh, you good boy? All right, let's go, come on. But you save the, dog, come! You save that for practice. And when you do your practice, right? Dog, come! Whoop, 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 whoop. When it gets you, you grab first before anything, and that's where you, yes! And then you give that dog chicken, steak, roast beef, baked salmon, and then you let them go play, right? But you don't end their fun or freedom with recall, then you get that 99.999% reliability. So when you have an oh shit moment and the dog gets away and you go, dog, come! They're like, chicken, steak, roast beef, then they're letting me go, right? But you're not this time, and I don't have food, right? But that's okay. If you have too many emergency recalls, it's a human problem, right? So the dog keeps getting out of the house or whatever, that's not a dog problem, that's a human problem.
I
But
learned that day not to chase. That was a horrible
Right.
decision.
yeah. You know, usually if you have a dog, again, I realize that, you know, a lot of times the history for the shelter dog starts when you get the dog. You don't know anything about the dog. Every now and then you get an owner surrender, or you get a dog where you know the history and you can piece some stuff together. So, you know, the history starts that day. And I start, you know, if it was me, I would be building basic skills. You know, building basic skills, reducing stress. I counter condition dogs all the time. I can't help it. If I'm in a room and a dog's having a moment, it's okay. That's what I do. It's just an auto response. I do it all the time because I understand the perspective of safe, unsafe, neutral and how dogs view information. You know that when dogs take in scent, they take in every single scent in the environment until they go, that's the one I want to focus on? Like every single scent. every one. That's intense. But they have 250 million scent receptors. There's one synapse from the nose to the amygdala, which is the area of the brain that really processes a lot of the fear. So scent is everything for dogs, right? So they're always taking in information and going, am I okay? Is everything all right? All the time, even in very subtle ways. So it's another reason why I film everything, so that I can watch it and slow it down and look at the environment. When you have dogs who don't get a schedule like being in a house, I think you need to do as much as you can to kind of recreate that for them. So as many walks and plays, and if you can do dog play, like all the things that you would do with a dog in a house, you should try to get it done in shelter. I realize you can't do that all the time, and every shelter is different, and not all dogs can socialize with other dogs, but that's what I would be working towards. Any other questions? Yeah.
You mentioned harnesses. Is there a specific type of harness or brand?
I like the Freedom Harness by the Freedom Harness by Two Hounds Design. Yeah, they don't pay me, but they make great harnesses. They have a nice soft understrap. It's kind of like a velvety material, and the top of the harness is like a martingale, so it closes around the dog. So if all hell breaks loose and you're just holding on, the harness really closes around them. If they're fit properly, it's almost impossible for the dog to come out. And they also have a front clip, so if you wanted to walk the dog by the front. And they also have a double leash where you can clip it on the back and the front. I find that to be a little cumbersome. The other thing that I started doing in 2013 after I got chased by a Jack Russell Terrier at 9:30 at night and I broke this finger because my dog went that way and the leash took my finger with it, and I don't want to break any more hands, is I walk dogs around my waist. So I have a waist apparatus, so the dog's hooked to my waist, because no matter who you are, your core and your legs are always stronger than your upper body and your wrists. So I still use my hands if I have to, but it's down to like 15%. Like I really don't, it's pretty much like walking your dog off leash. You just have the leash for safety, but it's pretty liberating to not have to have something in your hands, And where I live in Red Bank, it's kind of like Fallujah. I'm not lying. Like at any moment, there could be a dog right there off leash, and I'm like, shit, I need to do something. So if I need to step between the dogs and like have both hands free, or pick my dog up, right, or whatever I need to do, grab food, throw it at the dog, whatever. So I like being hands free out in the world with dogs. It's been very nice to have that. Yeah.
So what about with the harness and like the pit bull breeds, the heavy
Uh-huh.
chest and the muscle? Don't you find they pull more with that harness?
Pulling has nothing to do with equipment. Pulling has to do with stress and scent or access. So the dog's pulling because there's scent they need to get to. The dog's pulling because they're stressed, right? So I find that a lot of dogs on collars pull more because they're stressed. Imagine if every time you wanted something, you got a little choke, right? Every time you wanted some water or to change your channel, you got a little, some dogs just shut down and they're like, all right, screw it. But a lot of dogs don't, and they pull more, okay? So no, I don't find that equipment has it. Pulling, a lot of it is also reinforced by people because, see, I don't do that. When dog pulls, I stop. I might shuffle an inch, but I stop, shorten the leash, right? Wait, whoop, wait, right? So when I do stop start and I let the leash out quick, I grab it. And if the dog stays chill, we walk. Or if they circle back, we go. But a lot of people reinforce pulling. And you can tell when the dog's pulling you, right? And you're moving your feet. Every inch you move, you're reinforcing the dog for pulling. So I also don't let dogs go behind me like this move. Why? Because a friend of mine had an 85, 90-pound American Bulldog, and his dog decided he wanted to go behind and get a cat and pulled his arm out of his socket. Because he was just sort of chilling, and the dog went, cat! And he ripped his arm right out. The other thing is, a lot of times dogs, if they get used to going behind you, they'll go to grab food. So I just walk backwards, whoop. So the two never-evers on leash is, I don't let dogs pull inordinately, right? If the fire hydrant's right there, I'll hustle up. I'll help the dog out to get there. I don't let them go behind me, and I don't let them step in the street, unless I say in the street. My last dog, Silas, rest in peace, bud, he had a cue for in the street. I'd be like, in the street. He would go in the street. If he stepped in, oop, too bad. And I would just gently bring him out of the street and say, hold on, man, we're just going to chill here. Just time him out on leash. So I also taught him left and right, which was cool. It was cool. Yeah, so any other questions?
So you said when they pull on leashes, you said you kind of just stop them. Okay, just wanted to.
Yeah, well, stop start is one of those things where it's like shooting free throws. Like it's an art. stop start is, there's a lot to it, but yet it's really simple, And like if you stop, right, and the dog's still pulling, I just wait. I wait the dog out, I find most pulling happens in the first 3 to 5 minutes of the walk when the dog's like, oh my God, I'm outside. Or scent. And again, if the scent is within 3 to 5 feet, I just hustle up for the dog. Even in the best homes where the sun rises and sets on your dogs, they still smell more carpet than grass. They do. They smell more carpet than grass, and that's just the reality, even in the best homes, even my dogs, because you can't be out all day, and the walk's going to be 15, 20, 30, 5 if it's raining, so it's really important when you have dogs out on leash that you work to reduce their stress because they don't have their flight response. So it's like driving. At some point you're a little stressed when you're driving and sometimes more than others. So when dogs are out on leash and they're contained, at some point they're going to be a little stressed. Again, yes, I know there's dogs who are never stressed. They're always happy and they're just wiggly. Sure. But even those dogs have moments, right? And those dogs can end up with negative associations. So, again, just to underscore, dogs in shelters that need to be adopted out are not going to do well if they're reacting on leash. If they're a little shy, but they're allowed, they allow to be petted, if they're a little jumpy, but they're super happy, those dogs will get a reprieve. The rah, 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 right? That dog, even if they're frustrated, they're not going to do well. They're gonna have a bad rap, and that's it's not fair to them. Again, the dirty little secret. It's all about human behavior. So don't blame the dog. Dogs are innocent. They cannot formulate moral imperatives. They have the cognition of 3-year-old kids for their whole life once they reach social maturity. So someone starts trying to sell you some nonsense about, well, this breed, and that's bullshit. Dr. Karen Overall, who I interviewed a few years back, she's on 2 international working dog boards, and she says that 90% of dogs bred for a purpose don't do it. 90%. If you know Lewis Colby, you guys know who Lewis Colby is? You guys work with pit bulls? All right, go get the Lewis Colby book. American Pit Bull Terrier by Lewis Colby. Diane Jessup helped him write it. And what he said was, Lewis Colby. Colby. He said, now this was back in the day, and again, this book talks about dog fighting, but they don't condone it. But I could do another 40 minutes on fight dog or dog fighters because there's no such thing as fight dogs. But what he said was that 5 or 10 out of 100 dogs that he bred were just game, meaning when he put them in a box, they just did it, right? So he bred about 5,000 dogs in his lifetime, probably a little more at this point because the book was written a while ago. So what I like about Colby is he admits, I don't know anything. I'm just going to tell you what I found out, what I know, which is great. He's really honest. So if you take Dr. Overall, who knows tons and is a bona fide scientist, and you take Colby, who's just a dude who bred dogs, right? They both pretty much are saying like 90% of these dogs are not going to do the thing they're bred for, whether it's to sniff bombs at the airport or guide the blind. 90% of dogs that are bred for a purpose don't do it, right? So you can't say, oh, well, all this stuff about like, well, labs are, that's all from breeders to sell their dogs. They're great, loyal family dogs. A chow? Really? Okay. Because I know a lot of chows and they're super, but chows are also, if you've had to say, all right, Drayton, what are the 3 most, potentially shy dogs? German Shepherds, chows, Shar-Peis, right? Shy, meaning they have a little extra fear because those dogs are bred to be guard dogs, right? So again, we can't just say, well, it's this type of dog, right? What we have to do is look at the environment and then more specifically the context. Because if you change the environment and the context, you change the behavior. And a lot of that, as a matter of fact, all of it is human choices. I decide if I walk my dog on a collar and what kind. I decide if I say, leave it, yes, or no, right? I decide that. The dog's just trying to figure out life. Am I safe? Am I not safe? Right? So again, we could get all the PhDs and they'll agree, yep, you can reduce and stop behavior with aversive. Sure you can, but what's left in its place, right? Spontaneous recovery. Look into that. That's another good reason why you shouldn't be causing dogs fear or pain or startle or going, hey, ah! Because spontaneous recovery is the memory kicking in after you think the behavior was extinguished, but something says, not today. It's scary again, right? And then there's, the only thing dogs generalize well is fear. That's why a lot of times people say, well, my dog's super trained at the house, and then I go down the street and it's like they forget everything. Nope, you have new stimulus. You got scent, right? Maybe you're farther away from your dog now because you're in a field, right? Maybe that skateboard's too close today. Okay, so there's always an environmental, biological, and historical related to reinforcement or lack thereof. Those are the 3 reasons why behavior is occurring. So if more and more people left their bullshit at the door, seriously, like let's talk for real. Like, leave your shit at the door. So I pull from both ends of the spectrum, right? I don't know half as much as I want to know and need to know, but I'm super at what I do know, right? But it's all about every day, like every day, not 2 days, like every day for the last 17 years I've been working with dogs and learning. Instead, when I leave here today, I go walk the dog that's staying with me, then I edit video tonight from dog training sessions and see what the hell I could have done better, right? So here's what I'm going to leave y'all with. Dogs are phenomenal, and that's why we love them, because they are the most magnanimous, humble, kind creatures ever put on this earth, right? And they're innocent, yet they can land 25 bites in 4 seconds. And most dogs don't ever bite anybody, or they don't even bite as bad as they could. That's pretty amazing, the amount of shit that they put up with, even in really good homes, right? Even in really good situations, they put up with a lot of stress. Even if people aren't mean to them, but they don't get out enough, they don't get to play fetch enough, right? So considering all the damage that dogs could do and they don't, that's pretty amazing, right? And I love dogs for a lot of reasons, and you know, as long as I'm on this earth, drawing breath, I'm going to do everything I can every day to help dogs, help people with dogs, and to get people on the right path, which is don't cause fear and pain, don't use choke and shock, don't yell, don't hit, don't pin, right? Because you're going to create a problem. And if the dog doesn't bite, and they go, okay, so you got lucky, you got a dog who shut down quick, but what about all the other dogs, right? So just learn your stuff, guys. Don't just rely on, I've been doing it for, study, learn, and stay on the positive camp. It really isn't a matter of debate and, well, these people have this method. Bullshit. If you're hurting and scaring and choking and shocking dogs, you're not legit. You're using short-term solutions and you hope it's long-term. But what about the trachea? So somebody who's really happy with the prong collar, you know what I ask them? Have you had your dog's trachea x-rayed lately? Could be bruised. Maybe that's why he shut down. Remember, it works like this. Whack! Then just lean in. And anybody who's been in an abusive relationship knows what that dynamic's like, right? Or has been bullied, right? Remember that kid in the hall, he punched you once, then when you're like, oh shit, right? Yeah. So that's what that process is. That's what negative reinforcement is. The antecedent, the thing that precedes the behavior, is aversive. And people are hoping that the dog shut down. So thank you for all the hard work you guys do, and keep it going. My email is open 24 hours a day. So I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Twitter as Pitbull Guru. Reach out to me. I help everybody I can, as much as I can. All right, have a super day. Thanks for listening.